Hello and welcome to May's episode of Business as Unusual. We are so excited to kind of switch gears this month and do something a little bit different. We've got Ami Kassar, who is a recognized thought leader on financials and the CEO of MultiFunding, and also the author of The Growth Dilemma and a regular contributor to magazine. He's going to sort of turn the tables on me, and he's going to ask a lot of questions, and he's going to be joined by some amazing business leaders today on our session, and we're going to be taken through this the way to think about funding our businesses in different and unique ways today. So we're all going to be answering these questions live that knows us, but we want you to participate as well. So if you want to, answer the questions in the chat or ask questions in the chat, please do so as we through the session. So Ami, I wanted to just give you a chance to tell us what else is not on your bio before we introduce the rest of the panel. Welcome.
I have 2 dogs, a house. Thank you, Kathy. It's a pleasure to be with you. 12 years ago, on a Friday, I lost my big fat corporate job. I was a chief innovation officer for the largest issuer of credit cards to small businesses in the United States. And we completely decimated in the Great Recession. Before it was my turn to be let go, I helped let 960 people go. And my turn came on a Friday. After getting let go, I went to the bank. I deposited a check for my full home equity line of credit. Then I went home and told my wife what I did and started my company, MultiFunding, on Saturday. What we do at MultiFunding is we work with business owners and entrepreneurs to help them think through their growth plans, how big they want to get, how much risk they want to take, and understand, if they choose to, how they can use debt as a strategic tool to grow and also stay in control of their business.
Oh, wow. So that sounds a little scary, using debt to grow our business. So I don't know that many of us bootstrap businesses are really super comfortable with that topic. So I'm really excited to dig in today. So while we are dying to get started, I want to make sure I get to introduce our panel. So Lily, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and Edge One Medical.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Zachariah, co-founder and president of Edge One Medical. We are a service provider helping the medtech and biotech industry develop their innovative medical device or combination product technologies. So think as an example of an EpiPen that might be combined, or an auto injector, I should say, that might be combined with a digital app. So our role is to help those companies compliantly test and develop the necessary documentation to submit to the agency, the FDA primarily, for approval. We're based just outside of Chicago, Illinois, and we are a 10-year-old company, approximately 20 people, growing to about 25 in a few months.
Yes, you've got a fascinating and exciting business. It's been fun to see your growth over the last few years. Stacy Bales is joining us as well. Stacy, can you tell us a little bit about you, your career, and a little bit about Bales?
Sure. Stacy Bales, president and co-owner of Bales Metal Surface Solutions. We are electroplaters and polishers. We focus primarily on plastic injection molds. We're also located just outside of Chicago in Downers Grove. Right now we have about 30 employees, but we've seen 20% growth year over year the last 3 years. So we're looking to expand headcount and trying to get new equipment. And so this is going to be a really interesting topic.
Yeah, well, I feel fortunate to have worked with you guys for many years, and it's just been exciting to watch your business grow in the last few years, and you navigate all these challenges for the manufacturing space. And so last but not least, we've got Stephen Olds. Thank you for joining us today. Stephen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Exogistics?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Great to be here. So Stephen Olds, I'm the founder and CEO of Exogistics. We are a veteran-owned third-party logistics company helping our clients get better every 90 days. We are in 5 specific regions around the U.S., Chicago, Indy, Louisville, Memphis, and Dallas. Founded the company in 2008, so we are just over 14 years old, about 1,000 employees.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Kathy Steele, and I am CEO of Red Caffeine. We're a growth consultancy. And as it says on this slide, we build badass brands that people want to work for and with. So thrilled to get started today. We do, as a business, always talk to our clients about the different growth lane avenues that they can take to grow their business. So we're excited to see how we may be able to accelerate things. So I'm going to toss the baton and the QA over to Ami, and let's jump in.
Great. Thank you so much. So if you think about it, for everyone here on the screen and everyone in the audience who is a business owner or an entrepreneur, one of our toughest jobs as leaders is we are constantly making decisions about what big and small investments we want to make. How many people to hire? Do we open a new division, a new branch? Do we diversify? Do we add new products? Do we buy some more equipment? Do we change some marketing up? Do we try some different things? Constant decisions about big and small investments that we need to make. I would argue that we shouldn't make these investments without a plan. And it's really hard to have a plan without a goal. So my question for you, Lily, Stacy, and Stephen is, do you have a goal for your business, a clear top line and bottom line goal of what you're trying to get your business to in 3 years from now? Lily.
I get called on first. Absolutely. We do. And I would credit the fact that we utilize the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, to really help us guide and have a plan for not just 3 years, but our 1 year and our 10-year plan, and are constantly revisiting that to help us guide our decision-making process in terms of where we want to go as an organization.
Great. Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, I'll put a second plug in for EOS and Traction. We are also an EOS company, so we've got a very clear 10-year vision, 3-year plan, and 1-year operating plan. So we chart this out. We meet quarterly to take a look at our quarterly goals, but all ties to what we want to accomplish on an annual basis.
Cool. And how about you, Stacy? EOS
right on this bandwagon. I don't know. We're newbies though, so we just started at the first of the year and just did our big, hairy, audacious goals, and we're really excited about it and getting that clear picture and direction for not just my sister and I running the company, but to be able to communicate that to everybody is important. So really looking forward to see where we get traction in the end.
Awesome. As you think about your goals for the next 3 years, you might say, you're not going to get there. Well, it would be almost impossible to reach your goals without making investments in your company. You're going to have to hire, do different things, add products, equipment, etc. And the question is, are you making them fast enough to reach your goal? And do you have the right capital structure in place to support your goals? One of the things I've learned is that it's pretty impossible to look forward without starting by taking a step back. So my question for each of you is, what investments have you made in your business in the last 12 months? What have you invested in the last 12 months, Stephen?
Well, I think we reinvest a large portion of our profits back into the company every year. So we take a look at, God, where do we want to add more either sales effort or operating execution efficiencies. So we sit back in our annual planning process and think about, God, where do we want to make those investments? What yield do we want to get out of those investments as well? So typically for us, it's either growth focused or operational efficiency focused. Usually people or software is where we focus on.
So can you share just a couple of examples of actual investments you've made in the last 12 months?
Well, we actually engaged a consulting firm to think through our brokerage business. So one of the things we do for clients is transportation. So engaging that firm, we made an investment earlier this year to think through what our 3-year strategy looks like and how we need to think about that from a people perspective. So what roles are critical at what point in time in that growth plan?
Okay. How about you, Stacy? What are a couple of investments you've made in the last 12 months?
So right now we've been focused on equipment. My sister and I inherited the company from our dad about 12 years ago now. And it's kind of like buying that house that's like 25, 30 years old and your roof's starting to cave in a little bit and your HVAC system's on its last limbs. And So now, and with new technology coming along, it's really just kind of been picking away at different segments of our business and upgrading equipment as the capital comes in. So we replaced a lot of air systems last year and are working on some new plating lines this year. And, on the equipment side of things, those are obviously our biggest investments. And then really working on infrastructure as far as, training programs and how do we get new talent inside of our building and escalate them as quickly as possible. So we've been focusing some funds there and then hitting it on the other side with our branding and marketing campaigns to not only recruit new customers, but also to try to attract and retain talent. So that's
Awesome.
pretty much where the bulk of our funds are going right now.
And how about you, Lily?
Yeah, so for us, very similar. I would say the majority of our most recent investments have gone into people. So 2 different areas. Early last year, we made a strategic decision to expand our technical capabilities in a specific area, given how the landscape is changing with healthcare. So we invested heavily in some senior leadership there. We've also recently been investing heavily in sales and marketing. So complete overhaul of our messaging, our website, and also BD personnel. So that has been another huge area of investment for us most recently.
Great. So
And a building.
And
a new building.
And a new building. Yes, that's true. Forgot about that. It's 2 years old. It doesn't seem so recent anymore.
Yeah. Some of what we invest in is pretty measurable. Did a direct mail campaign or some new marketing, we can pretty well quickly tell if it's converting or not. Hire new salespeople, are they selling or not? New equipment, new location. And then also sometimes we're called upon as leaders, and it's perfectly okay to make more intangible investments like branding, employee training, or a new CRM system. I would argue and suggest that each of you and in this audience think about sort of look at your financial statements a little bit differently. Today in our profit and loss, on the top, we have our variable expenses. And the bottom, we have everything else, all of our operating expenses lumped in. Everything that we spend, from rent to travel to mortgage payments to whatever it is all sitting there. How about starting to split that up between money, which would be called operating expenses that we have to spend to keep our trains running, and investment expenses would be money that we want to spend because we're trying to grow and expand or reinvest in our company. So we can actually start to see and understand how much money we are spending every year in trying to grow and get better and change. And that we can start to see and measure that. And if we could do that, I think it would be a very helpful tool to help us grow and expand and start to measure and track what we're doing. That's nothing that we're going to be able to do right here. I could expect you or anyone in the audience to do. But if you can and you're interested, I encourage you to go work with your bookkeeper or your controller or your CFO, or maybe you just do it yourself and go out into your general ledger and tag what your non-essential expenses over the last 12 months so you can start to see how much you're actually spending. We did it for our company, and we're a smallish company. And what we found is that over the 12-month period, we had spent $300,000 on trying things, on experimentation. And that was a mind-boggling number to me because I said, holy cow, if I would have an extra $300,000 in my pocket, that's a lot of money. But to Stephen's point, I'm reinvesting it in my business, my biggest asset that I'm trying to grow and expand. And if you can start to get a handle on that number, it'd be very helpful. My question for each of you is, and again, this is not an answer in precision, but if you think about all of your operating expenses that you spent, say, in 2021, if you were to guess what percentage of those operating expenses you are reinvesting or investing back into the company, what percentage do you think that would be? Lily, do you have a gut sense? And if the answer is too low, that's okay. How about you, Stacy?
For 2021, I think we were somewhere between 8 and 10% went back into the company.
Okay, it's a fairly measured percentage. And Stephen, how about you?
God, we're probably closer to 40 to 50% of net income is reinvested back into the company.
That's super aggressive.
Yeah. Yep.
It's pretty important, if you think about it, to be able to track all this stuff. I don't think we have but I'm happy to send anyone who wants it. We actually built a scorecard for ourselves where we took all of our projects. And I'm sorry, I don't have a slide for it, but that's okay. And we said what we've spent, is it measurable? And am I happy that I did it? So I could see that $300,000 where it all went, under what initiatives. Somewhere I would do that again in a second. Maybe I should do more. Somewhere that was a dumb waste of money, and somewhere it's too early to tell. All of it being okay. If you have an investment portfolio, you're going to have some disasters. I would argue that you should set a timeline for the different investments that you make and meet with your management team regularly or quarterly on it to check in on it. How are things going? Some investments you might want to double down, triple down. Some you might want to kill, but keep in this methodology of checking your investments all the time. Acknowledging some investments won't have an ROI, and that's okay. We rebranded our website last year. We're a service company. I'll never know for certain exactly in a quantifiable way what that yielded for me, but it's okay with it. We hadn't done it for 7 years. I'm okay. And also I encourage each of you to reflect. Think about the biggest investments you made this past year. Would you do it again? If not, what have you learned? And can you think of an investment that was a disaster? Can any of you think of an investment that you made in the last 12 months that just was a disaster? Stephen.
God, how much time do you got? I think, again, the way we view investment, we will allocate, again, a portion of our net income to investment. What we typically do is make micro investments. So if we're going to allocate $250,000 to new sales resources, we'll deploy one sales resource, see how he or she does, right? So we'll evaluate that investment. But I would say probably our where we've made mistakes in the past is software investments. And I would say in the past 36 months, where we've made an investment, a software platform, hoping to get better productivity, visibility into numbers, and really haven't gotten the results we've wanted. So I'd say software probably is our biggest swing and a miss, probably the last couple of years.
Lily, how about you?
Yeah,
Any
I would
disasters?
say yes. We had one very much comes to mind, and it was a personnel hire. Ended up not being a fit, didn't have the right background, didn't have what we needed, and it was a huge disappointment when we had to part ways. But we know it's still the right decision for the company. So for us, it's just finding the right fit. We also had a similar scenario in terms of smaller investment, but still software related, hoping to get some more automation out of it, and it can only go so far. So everything software related seems to just need some more customization and tweaking to get it to that perfect point. And so that's a little bit more investment required there as well. So those I would say are the big two.
And Stacy, how about you?
I think we're a little bit lower risk than maybe some other companies in that, living through the recession here in 2008, 2009, and being younger business owners, I think, our tolerance for risk is a little bit lower. So we tend to really, debate new investments and things pretty heavily before we do it to make sure that we can pull it off in the end. It does tend to drag some projects out maybe a little longer. To your point, software investments, we're in the middle of an ERP upgrade, which is always fun, and it's taken a little longer than we wanted to, but I don't consider that a flop because we haven't, overspent to accomplish it. It's just taking a little longer than we would have hoped.
I just want to say that if we don't have some investments in our portfolio of things we're investing in our company that are a flop, we're not taking enough risk, and we're probably moving too slowly. Okay. Some of the things we try aren't going to work out. If you don't try some new marketing or sales tactics and they don't work, what did you learn? You continuously have to be willing to take some risk and understand that some of it is not going to work out. Maybe here's the important question I'm going to ask each of you. If you think about the way you were investing in your business last year, and you kept that investment pace up, do you think you're on track to meet your 3-year goal, Stacy?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Lily, how about you?
I would say yes, but with an asterisk. And the asterisk comes in the form of we think we could probably double where we thought we'd be in 3 years if we actually made even more investment. So I don't think I think we need to revisit our 3-year goal and up it and make more investments.
Okay. And Stephen, how about you?
I'd probably answer the same way. Yeah, I think, again, we were affected by COVID, especially our staffing business. So I think our investment last year is kind of different than the investments we're making going forward. But yeah, I would think, our 5-year growth rate's about 30, just under 40% a year growth. So I think, again, those micro investments is typically how we think about risk and risk tolerance.
Got it. Okay. We're through part 1. Everyone's still sitting or standing? Who's ready to start stretching your limits? If you think about it, as we decide how much to invest in our business or reinvest, which is essentially putting money back in that we could take out, put into our pocket, we're taking an element of risk as we do that. Mm-hmm. And when we make decisions about risk, we mix up the left side and the right sides of our brains. We have the forecasts and the spreadsheets and the models and the projections and what the numbers tell us. And then we have our feelings and our emotions and our egos and our prior experiences with money and the stage where we're at in our life. And then we kind of mush it all up in a pit. And that's how we kind of come up with our answers, and they change over time. We each have a risk tolerance that also changes over time. Some of us are extremely risk flexible. We would literally sell our firstborn for the company. And others of us are much more risk averse and much more risk concerned. To maybe put it in a bit more of a realistic spectrum, if you're risk flexible, you would consider putting a lien on your house to take a loan to get growth capital for your company. And if you're risk averse, you would not personally guarantee a loan for your business. If you're risk neutral, you're somewhere in the middle. Stacy, how would you roughly think about your risk tolerance today?
Well, knowing that I am the personal guarantee on all of our business loans, definitely have some risk in there, but again, trying to stay calculated at what we're putting our money into and new marketing strategies, new equipment, things that we know we can get the ROI on. Again, I still think we're a little bit risk intolerant over here as far as making giant leaps, and I don't know. You're asking a lot of good questions, and you got me going now.
Aha!
It's what you wanted, right?
Okay, all right, we're done. Thanks. Have a good day. Lily, how about you?
I would say I'm kind of risk neutral, as you described your 2 scenarios, but recognizing need to be more risk taking.
And Stephen, how about you?
Got it. I would say probably the opposite. I started the company in 2008, so the Great Recession was just kicking off. So I did literally bet the farm. So I put everything I had into the company to get it going. With the way I view risk now is I almost feel I have a greater responsibility with the number of employees I have, right? So thinking about how I need to sustain the business and create a great place for them to work at is definitely part of how I view risk right now. So reinvesting profits from the company, absolutely. Do I swing for the rafters every time I make an investment? Not so much anymore.
Okay, that's a good point, and it changes over time.
For sure.
What I find often, though, that happens is, like Stephen, like me, I literally risked the farm to build my company.
Right.
What I did was literally, if you think back about it, literally insane.
Yep.
Okay. And what we learn, though, is that sometimes what I see is in those first few years, people take incredible risks. And then if they're fortunate enough to get through it and be sitting in rooms like this today, they almost have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they never want to take risk again, and they think that debt is evil.
Mm-hmm.
And be careful, debt can be evil, but sometimes really the time to really throw the fuel on the fire and really grow and expand is actually when you've worked out your model. So ironically, the debt is less risky if you're at a point where you've actually worked out your model. So that's just something really to think about. If you think about us.
On that point though, is there certain like points that happen? I was like writing down risk waves. So, of course, when you're starting up your business, you likely don't have a lot of excess capital and you need to put your house on line or some other form of equity on the line or take equity. As you mature your business, those are some of the high five moments where you're like, oh, my house is no longer on the business. Like certain risk inflection points that you should be paying attention to the ups and downs, those waves.
I wish it happened in a straight line, and I wish there were like consistent patterns for every business, because every business evolves differently, right? And then people stage, and it's a balance between what's going on in the business and what's going on in people's personal lives as well. So as you get older, you might, or at later stages of your career, you might be less inclined to take risks. Okay. Or sometimes there's a wide spring of where people just do illogical things that in my mind are illogical. One time early on in my practice, I had an entrepreneur who had a cleaning company in San Jose, California, and needed some money. This was during the Great Recession. And we got him an SBA loan for 6% on the 10-year loan for, I think, $800,000 that required a lien on his house. And it had a monthly payment of about $8,200, which he could well afford, and would have set him on his way. And for whatever his reason was, and I have no idea, he said, hell or high water, no lien on my house. And the only other thing during that time in the market we could find him was a 1-year loan at 36% interest, which he took against my advice. But he took it, and he landed up bankrupt a few years later. And so whatever in his brain, maybe it was him or his mom or prior experiences or his wife was saying no lien on my house, actually made him lead to a financial decision where having a monthly payment of $8,200 a month instead of something closer to $38,000 a month drove him into bankruptcy. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, there's a lot of life circumstances too that drive, especially private companies.
Absolutely. Okay, here's a question for everybody in the each of you. Why don't we start with Stacy? Stacy, what is restricting your growth today?
Ooh, I'm going to go with people. We're a service company, so everything that we do here is based off of direct labor hours. The less people you have, the longer your lead times are, and the less work you can push through. So it's definitely people right now.
Okay. Stephen, how about you?
I'd probably say the same thing. Yeah, I think the great resignation is alive and well. Finding and retaining talent certainly is a challenge, I think, for everybody. On the staffing side of my business, just getting people who want to go to work, quite frankly. So,
got it. And how about you, Lily?
I would echo people as well as automated processes. So we currently are looking to try to move into more automated processes to increase our efficiencies.
So I'm going to flip the question on you. Uncle Joe just gave each of you a gift of $1 million with a caveat. You have until the end of the year to invest it in things in your business that you're not doing today. And if you don't invest it, he's taking it back. What would you do with the money, Stephen?
Certainly more salespeople. So I would invest that in more salespeople. I would invest that probably in an upgrade in a few of our software systems to drive efficiency.
Okay. How about you, Stacy?
I I know Kathy would love this answer, but I know, we're missing some gaps on a customer relationship module that works with our ERP system and all the marketing that they're doing for us would be one investment. And then upgrading some of our plating lines would be the second half of that puzzle.
Okay. And Lily, how about you?
People, some additional equipment for increased capacity, and automation of some of our processes.
So a question I have for each of you, don't answer me now, just think about in the back of your head, is money's pretty cheap. So why aren't you doing these things? Just think about it. All right. Let's keep going. Please open up the slides. Welcome to the Velocity Matrix, and no, it's not a science fiction. And Kathy, we're going to include you in this. And we're going to now become a group of consultants retained by a marketing company to help them develop 3 different growth plans for their company and decide which one they want to pick. As we're thinking about this for their business, I hope you'll think for you at the same time about your businesses and how it might affect you. Please flip the slide. Kickstart Marketing is a marketing company that had $4 million of sales in the last 12 months. The owner's profit was $1,000. Took that home to pay taxes, mortgage, tuition, go on vacation, etc. And over the last 12 months, $300,000 was invested back into the business using cash flow. Their current goal is to be a $6 million business in 3 years with $600,000 profit, which would make their business worth $2.4 million at a 4x multiple. Please flip the slide. So I asked them to say if they were to keep investing in their business, remember they invested $300,000 last year, what would they do? And so they came up with a shopping list, primarily of different people that they would hire to keep up their 3x business plan. And they believe if they do that and they keep investing at the same rate they invested last year, they would be on track to be a $6 million business in 3 years, with a bottom line of $600,000 and a business valuation of about $2.4 million. But then I said to them, and please flip the slide, go crazy. Forget about all the rules. You're not going to invest $300,000. You're going to invest $900,000. So go shopping. And they have a much more exhaustive list. If they ever had $900,000 to invest or reinvest in the company this year, they would in fact believe they would be on track to be a $10 million business with $1 million of profit on a business worth $4 million. And then I said to them one more time, please flip the slide. That was all a little bit of a joke, and Santa is not going to be so kind. So you don't have $900,000 to spend. You have $600,000 to spend. You need to cut your list a little bit. And based on that formula, they think they're on their way to be an $8 million business in 3 years with $800,000 worth of profit, and their business would be worth $3.2 million. And so now we have laid out for them 3 different scenarios, and this is something that each of you and everyone in the audience could do for your companies. 3 different scenarios of growth plans about what their company could be worth. Please flip the slide. Let's go back and think a little bit about now what Kickstart Marketing could do. If they want to keep up their $300,000 investment level next year, they could sustain that through cash flow. They don't really have to do anything. If they want to do the $600,000 investment level, well, they have a $300,000 hole to fill. And in that respect, there's an option of an S SBA loan at 6% interest, with monthly payment of about $3,100 a month, and no lien on the house because it's under $350,000. And if they want to kind of go for the home run gold plan, that would be a $900,000 investment level. And they have a $600,000 hold to fill. Well, they have a 10-year SBA loan with a monthly payment of about $6,200 a month and a lien on their house. Or they have an equity investor willing to invest 20%, give them $600,000 for 20% of the company. Please flip the page. Now we've actually out for them all the velocity matrix. They can see the different plans, the different growth plans. In the back of the details, what investments would support each. And they have the financing options and the pros and cons of each to consider the risks and the benefits of the different choices. Please flip the slide. Oops, I'm sorry. Please go back. Boop, boop, boop. So my question for each of you is, why don't we start with you, Lily? Actually, Kathy, you're going to vote on this too. If you were to make a recommendation to this business owner, what would you pick? The 1X, the 3X, or the 2X? And would it be the SBA or the equity?
Are you asking me or Kathy?
We'll start with Kathy. Sorry, Kathy first. What would you vote for?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would go with the 2X plan. I love the limited risk of not having to finance it with a personal asset. I don't love giving equity up unless there's a value brought to the table. And so, I think an equity play would not. And I think this gives an opportunity to ease into this type of financing model, that if you're seeing traction from this ability to double down on, a profit only strategy, I think then maybe a year later, I would maybe see it taking more investment on, but that's the way I'd approach it.
Lily, how about you?
So my risk neutral would say the 2X plan, but given where our industry is at and where I think we can go, given what our customers are telling us, I think the 3X plan would actually be a better fit, but I'd like to do it without equity, to go the SBA route and not have to give up the equity, as Kathy mentioned.
Okay. Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, I probably would answer the same way, either the 2X or 3X plan. I think what COVID taught us business owners is the unforeseen can happen. So on a 3-year growth horizon, taking on a $900,000 investment, hoping to understand what happens 3 years from now. Again, we all got a little bit of a reality injection with COVID on that one. So I would be in between the 2X and 3X, really to take a hard look at risk.
Okay. And Stacy, how about you?
You know what? I would say the 2X plan, but based on what we actually do, we're actually doing more of like the 3X plan, and I would definitely go with the SBA. And thanks to COVID, I mean, there's great rates out there right now for businesses to reinvest. So I would go 3 times plan with the SBA.
Okay. So everyone here is basically willing to take on some degree of debt, primarily through an SBA vehicle, to try to grow their business faster. If you're making a recommendation to kickstart marketing, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Kathy, are you using any debt or equity to grow your business faster, or are you growing it through cash flow?
I'm still growing it through cash flow, although, having gone through this with you in the masterclass, it really sparks some thinking, and we've definitely been doing some investing. And so, I'm really looking hard at like the 2X type of plan to accelerate some growth activities.
Okay. Lily, how about you? How do you do it today? Do you borrow or do you do it through cash flow?
Yeah, most of what we've historically been doing is the 1X plan through our cash flow. I'll put the asterisks again on the acquisition of a property that was through a debt financing with SBA support as well, and a bank loan. But in terms of just our business, we did this year earlier, we did begin conversations about how to bring in some money into the company. We haven't solidified our strategy yet, but we are seeking to do something. So this is very timely for us.
Stephen, how about you? How are you doing it today?
Typically through cash flow. We do have a line of credit that we lean on to balance out receivables and payables. We have done 2 acquisitions in the past, so looking at an acquisition that would require debt, absolutely.
Okay. And Stacy, how about you?
We also have a line of credit, and then we also have been leveraging SBA loans, not only for refinancing our building and helping us to take some equity out there, but also for equipment loans.
Great. So I just want to be clear what line of credits are meant for. Line of credits are there for working capital, for seasonality, and for surprises. In my opinion, in essence, like an equipment line that you're going to convert and term out. General lines of credit are not meant or intended for growth capital. If you're making specific investments that you to pay off over a number, it'll take some time to pay back. You should do that with term debt. People get in trouble when they use their line of credits to do that, because either sometimes things don't work out as planned, or something comes up and they need the line of credit and then they don't have access to it anymore. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's now, if all of you are comfortable, and are there any questions from the audience? I don't see it in the channel.
Yeah. They'll feed us through any audience questions, but I wanted to go back to some earlier about like metrics and ROI, and and dig into that expense versus investment, because I think that was a really interesting thing that you shared in the last session I did with you, and I was curious, is there a way to tie the people investments? They're not either production, so I think if I hire somebody on the shop floor, there's a definite correlation, top line revenue, on what they would bring to the table in terms of production, or Lily or myself with some of our team for billable hours. But I'm curious, like administrative team investment, are things bringing time back so they're allowing other people capacity? So how do you quantify some of those investments, or is that not really feasible?
Well, I think there's a couple answers to that. First of all, you have to be, depending on the size of your company as you go through all this, a little bit cautious of total analysis paralysis. You want to do it, but it's down to the microsecond of time. You want to be careful not to go too crazy. So that's just a general point of it. But I do think, and it's an important thing that we should all be doing as leaders, and it's total investment. Every single one of us, including me, spend time doing things that are not a productive use of our time, that we could hire other people or contractors to do, and we could free up our time for bigger thinking or more strategic thinking, or working on our business instead of in our business. And if we make that decision, say I make a decision, this year I'm going to hire a virtual assistant, and I've never had one before. And I'm going to try to see if I can free up 8 hours a week, whatever the number is. I would think that for calendar year 2022, because that's an experiment, something that we're trying, and an expense that we've never had before, it would be completely worth it and legitimate to tag that as an investment expense. At some point, investment expenses become part of operating expenses if they work. And then it's also okay to flip that over. Let's say I hired that virtual assistant. I free up 8 hours a week. She or he is working great. And I can never visualize going back. Well, at that point, that virtual assistant is now a part of operating expenses.
Okay.
And so now, what I don't have, because this is all fairly new and nearly new methodology, there's not like rules like you got to try that for 3.46 months before you flip it over or something. We don't have rules like that. So that's what I mean about analysis paralysis. I think an investment expense is something that you're trying, that you want to work on. And if you hit a point where that is becoming kind of part of your operating business, then you move on. And that becomes a part of operating expenses. Does that make sense?
No, I think that really clarifies it. I think that was a great analogy, a great example.
And what I say to people is the concepts are more important than precision. So if you spend more than 2 minutes deciding something is an investment expense or an operating expense, flip a coin and put it in that column and move on.
And Ami, what's the right time horizon for entrepreneurs and business owners to think about when that investment should pay dividends? I mean, we often think in a calendar year, so we make an investment, we want to see at least positive momentum from that investment within that 12-month period. But how would you advise us to think about, should every investment, have a 24 or 36-month life cycle, or how would you advise us to think about time?
I think every investment is different, and you should think about it before you make it. And some investments, will have a long-term horizon. Some investments, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly. But you should track it. So generally what I find is until a company gets to a certain size, most of the time, all these decisions are being made by gut and without much follow-up. And often there's an entrepreneur who changes their mind every few hours about what they want to try next.
For sure.
And often and I know I've been guilty of that, and I continue to be guilty of that sometimes, even though I preach this stuff. Okay. And so getting in the discipline of saying, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to take X dollars and put it against it. Why are we doing it? What do we expect from it? Knowing it might not work. I'm not trying to take risk away. And then having a plan accordingly. Sometimes I think, Stephen, that you talked about micro investing, and I'm a huge believer in that. What can we do on a small scale to prove this thesis? But also the other side of it is, if you have a proper methodology for this, you might say, if we hire one person to make outbound marketing calls and then it's starting to work, why not hire 5? I think, Stephen, you said if you had the extra $1 million, you would hire more salespeople. Well, one theory is hire 10 salespeople, knowing that in 180 days, you'll probably land up with 3.
Right.
But if you hire one at a time, you're taking a huge amount of risk, because no matter how brilliant a hirer you are, there's a 50% chance you're wrong anyway.
Exactly. Right.
So sometimes that's a great tool to scale up faster if you're in a business that is salesperson intensive.
Mm-hmm.
People are afraid to do that sometimes, though, because they don't want to make the capital investment. So model it out. What does a salesperson cost you a month?
So call it $6,000 a month.
Okay. And how many months does it take to find out if a salesperson is going to work or not?
Well, I think if they're on the right track within 90 days, but probably 6 months to start to get yield out of that person.
So you could do the math. You could do the math to say, if you're hiring salespeople at the rate you're doing now, or you hire classes of salespeople, pick your size. expecting a 50% fail rate and knowing what they yield for you.
Right.
Are you hiring them fast enough? And if the restraint for not hiring them fast enough today, which might not be for you, because it sounds like you're printing money, is cash flow.
Right.
Well, maybe there's a good business case there to borrow money to do it faster.
Yep.
And I'm not here to shove debt down any of your throat. This is all about finding a growth lane and sleeping well at night.
Mhm.
So if the thought of debt, and it does for some people, it just makes them lie awake at night and have shivers, grow slower. It's okay. There's no rule.
So when you think about an investment that will have an ambiguous return, right? And Kathy probably has an opinion on this, but let's just say, hey, we want to do a new website and it's going to cost $50,000. And the return, we may not see an increased return in traffic, in sales inquiries for 24 to 36 months. Do you track something like that? Would you advise us to track an investment like that?
Personally, I wouldn't. I would say, I've decided to redo my investment. I'm in the service business, I'm not in the e-commerce business. Be able to track it. It's time, and that's sitting in the bucket of non-trackable and not measurable, and move on.
Okay.
If you invest, as an example, in employee training programs,
tough to find out the ROI, right? Yeah.
It could be, if you're a Fortune 1000 company or 500 and you have 300 analysts sitting there in the corner, you could put 20 of them in the job and they'd probably be wrong anyway.
Right.
So
what percentage of investments then should just be something that is table stakes, like a website, like employee training, things that may not necessarily yield a very clear ROI, but it's just the cost of doing business?
I don't think there's a hard rule about what percentage that is. I think it depends on your industry and your comfort level. But I do think even if investments without a clear ROI make you feel uncomfortable, you should get comfortable with that, because that's part of it. Part of it is, I know I won't be able to measure this, but it feels right, and I'm going to do it anyway.
So back to your Uncle Joe example, how much of that $1 million would you invest in non-returnable investments?
I don't think that there's a hard rule.
Okay.
I don't think there is I think it depends on the stage of your business, where you're at, and where it's going on. Kathy, I think I see a question from the audience.
I do. Yeah. It is, how do you help people sort of manage their risk tolerance or their fear of, of taking on this risk, given that some of these decisions are crazy and they don't always work out in the end?
Maybe you celebrate failures. So in our company, when we try something and it doesn't work out, there's no shame. We celebrate it. We learned, we tried, on to the next thing. So if you're a culture where if there are failures that there was a good thesis for, and then they fail, and those people are reprimanded or scolded or let go, you got a problem. It's up to embracing a culture of risk. It's up to saying, we know and expect that a percentage of the money we invest every year is going to fail. Mm-hmm. If you invest in a stock portfolio, likely, say you invest in 20 stocks, if one or two don't go in the toilet, you're probably not being risky enough.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go back. I think, one of the things that sort of everybody said in so many words, and Stephen said it, verbatim about micro investments. I love the idea that, here's an experiment, here's a thesis about where this investment's going to take us. I do feel like, there's even ways to measure a web investment when, you're talking about like how to refine your RFQ process or other pieces of automation that stem from a web, site investment. So it may not generate you, direct sales dollars, but there may be other opportunity or efficiency gains that can be tied to those types of investments. But to Ami's point, like, making it a simple tracking system for these investments so that you're not sort of, measuring every little thing and you have no solutions at the end. I really, like the idea that you're thinking about the key things that you're investing in and then you're looking for some return. Like we're hiring an employee, we're looking for them to offload some burden off of somebody else or be a producer to our top line revenue. I think those are pretty easy equations. It's some of the more intangibles that become more challenging. So Ami, is there anything else you want to leave us with before we tell people how to connect with you if they've got more questions and want some more information on what you do at MultiFunding?
Well, this will be the best way to wrap, I think. Lily, what's one thing you're going to do, hopefully, as a takeaway from all this?
I will be making that investment scorecard.
Great.
And taking it to the leadership team and reviewing it and keeping track of it and celebrating failures. I was beating myself up recently over one of them, so I'm going to celebrate instead of the opposite.
Let it go. If you don't fail, you'll never grow. Stacy.
I'm going to try to get myself out of analysis paralysis, and I'm sure my sister is going to throw that word at me every chance she gets, because as the financial person, I'm constantly crunching numbers and trying to figure out, does this make sense? And it kind of, you just got to pull the trigger at some point. So hopefully
we like to call that pencils down.
Okay.
Yep.
Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to think about, God, what when we reinvest net income, how much of that reinvestment do we expect a return out of, like a new salesperson, marketing program, and how much of those investments do we do just because it's the right thing to do, like in company culture, right? So we're not expecting a return, but there's going to be another benefit, called employee retention that doesn't have a monetary value to it.
Great. And Kathy, how about you?
Well, I'm going to further dig into that SBA loan idea. I mean, I would love to make an acquisition. So, that may be a funding vehicle to give me more confidence around that investment. And I'm, of course, going to steal Lily's scorecard because, she's the engineer and she always comes up with great frameworks. So, borrow her scorecard and use that to overlay on our investment strategy for caffeine.
And what we'll do, guys, is we will, if we want to flip the slides, or I'm happy to send everyone my full slide deck. We just used a much more abridged slide deck today that actually has an example of our scorecard that we use, so you can see it. So if anyone out in the audience or in this room wants to get our full slide deck, if you just want to scan that QR code, we'd be happy to send it to you. And Kathy, I want to thank you so much, and your team who took a lot of detail into organizing today's session. I thought it was awesome. And thank you, Stephen, Lily, and Stacy for joining us as well. And I hope you got something good out of it.
Definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you.
Again, I also want to echo thank you to Lily and Stephen and Stacy and Ami. It was an incredible session, and I really loved doing this interactive session where we got some, really great insights to a lot of great business leaders. If you want to connect with Ami, you can reach him directly on LinkedIn, and as well, we've got his email address. And Ami, I will make sure that we include that scorecard in and the landing page where we do the repost for this event, so people will have access to both the slides and that scorecard. And then I also would love to let people know the next guest speaker coming up in just a few weeks. Thank you to our sponsors, of course, but our next speaker is Rob Johnson. Anybody in the Chicago market might remember Rob. He was a CBC newscaster faster, and he is going to turn what he learned in on the big screen into talking to us about how to do better presentations, how we can win using virtual tools, and so really excited to have Rob. He's an incredible speaker. He's really going to give us some great tips on improving our virtual things as we're all becoming so accustomed to. So again, thank everybody for joining us. Thank you to our audience for joining us. We will see you next time in June. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.